disclose what you don't know.
Yeah.
If you don't know, there's a...
Yeah, it's not the seller's job
Yeah.
to do the surveys or
Right.
anything like that. That is in Utah, that is the buyer's obligation.
Right, right. So very important message. It's not the seller's job to do the due diligence for the buyer. So if you're a buyer out there and your seller doesn't disclose something because they don't know, it's not their job to go discover it. It's your job as a buyer to go discover it.
Right. The seller's only job is the seller's disclosures.
Yes, yes.
And that's an important document.
Right.
And every seller should use it. Even if you're a flipper or investor
Yes.
and you've never lived in the home, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
My recommendation to everybody,
Yeah.
retail and non-retail, is to always provide seller's disclosures.
Yes.
Always answer them honestly.
Absolutely.
If there's one where you can check no, but you can also write in sellers never lived in the house.
Yeah.
Sellers unable to verify.
Yeah.
Buyers, it's buyer's duty to figure this out because the seller doesn't know. You can write that in.
Yeah.
But what that does is it moves the obligation of proof.
Gotcha.
Okay, and that's a big deal in law. Whose job is it? Whose duty is it?
Yes.
To prove somebody did something wrong.
Right.
Right. And if the seller provides these disclosures, what that is it lays everything on the buyer's lap.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
It says, buyer, here's everything I know.
Yeah.
And even things I don't know.
Right.
Right? It's now your job to look at that, and if there's something that I don't know or can't confirm, it's your job to investigate it.
Right, right. Very cool. How did, just out of curiosity, because if title is holding earnest money, sometimes title companies won't release earnest money unless they get from both parties, like approval from both parties. Did that
that
affect
one
this at all?
Yeah, the title company was holding on to the money.
Okay.
It's under Utah law,
Yeah.
and the Utah REPC, and the Utah Earnest Money Release Addendum.
Yes.
Right? It only takes one signature.
Okay.
Right? It only actually takes whoever's request, like when this buyer cancels the contract, the buyer can cancel the contract, provide notice to the seller, and then ask for their money back from the title company or broker.
Got it.
First, you should be depositing earnest money with your broker, not the title company.
Okay.
It's a much better place to put it.
Got it.
But it can be either way. So if a broker's holding on to the money, it's up to the broker to release it or not.
Okay.
Most do with that signature, because the buyer's going to submit earnest money to their own agent's broker.
Right.
And then they're going to submit the cancellation to the seller, and then to the broker, they're going to say, hey, we canceled the contract within the deadline, and the broker just releases the earnest money. Title companies are a little different.
Yeah.
Because title companies are independent third parties.
Right.
And and I own a title company, REI Title.
Yes.
And we're not going to release earnest money just because one side says that they deserve it.
Right.
Either side. Doesn't matter.
Right.
Because we don't want to get in the middle of a lawsuit and release money to somebody without knowing for sure that they deserve the return of the earnest money.
Right.
And that was one of our arguments, was that, hey, the title company's sitting on our earnest money. It belongs to us now, the sellers.
Yeah.
And we won it, and it's now been 3 months, so if you don't drop this, we're going to sue you to release the earnest money.
Got it.
So when you do leave earnest money at a title company, both parties are almost certainly, and almost every title company I know does this.
Yes.
So it's pretty standard. Both the buyer and the seller will need to agree who the earnest money gets released to.
Gotcha.
And if there's a dispute, obviously one side's not going to sign.
Yeah.
And then what happens after a few months, if the parties can't decide, what most title companies will do is then submit the money to the state, unreclaimed funds pool of money. And then that's going to force the buyer and seller to actually go to court. And a judge will then decide. Because title companies don't want to sit on this money while you battle things out.
Right.
So be aware that, if you can't resolve it quickly and over the earnest money, eventually that title company is just going to give it to the state. And once it's at the state, it's going to require some sort of litigation to get it out.
That makes sense. To add to that little story, I learned a lesson once through a friend of mine who you know as well. And you probably know both parties, actually. He was the seller. He's a flipper. And their buyer was from Arizona, if I'm not mistaken. The title company that was holding the $4,000 earnest money check ended up returning it back to the buyer wrongfully because they'd canceled after.
And the seller got upset.
And the seller got very upset. So the lesson I learned from there is, if I hear of a cancellation and I'm the seller, immediately I'm going to call the title company and say,
whoever's holding the earnest money.
Yeah, whoever's holding the earnest money.
Yeah, even if it's the other brokerage.
Exactly. And let them know that, hey, this is getting canceled. Just outside of that, let's hold the earnest money, don't give it back. But yeah, I mean, this seller was really upset because he's like, I'm never getting that earnest money back. Some guy in Arizona, got it all back in his bank account. He's not going to send it to me. And it was interesting because he, had a conversation with the potential buyer, I should say, from Arizona, and saying, hey, contractually you're supposed to send that to us. The title company was, and the guy's like, well, I don't want to send it back, and
that's like, come sue me.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, something that you need to be aware of if you're a seller, if that ever happens to you, maybe take the extra step to call whoever's holding the earnest money
and say, don't release it.
Exactly.
Because I'm going to challenge it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that the title company requiring both signatures, that's not law.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Because again, the way the purchase contract and the addendums are done, if the buyer cancels,
Yes.
they can request the money back.
Yeah.
And if the buyer breaches, the seller can submit a form and request the earnest money.
Gotcha.
It's title company policy.
Got it.
Right? It's what it's
Yes.
our policies. We don't want to get involved,
Yes.
and we don't want to be stuck in the middle of anything.
Right.
So we just have our own internal policy saying we're not going to do it.
Right. Exactly. Very smart.
Yeah, very smart.
You must be an attorney.
Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. All right, guys, we're going to take another commercial break. We've got more stories when we come back. You're definitely not going to want to go anywhere if you're thinking about buying or selling a home. These are lessons that you would rather learn from other people than yourself. So stay tuned.